Let me move on to a very important session, which is the keynotes with Mr. Amitabh Kant, the CEO of Niti Aayog, and Debjani Ghosh, President of Nasscom. You know, one of the reasons I'm extremely happy that we got Mr. Kant and Debjani on together is because between you both, you straddle strategy and execution, Mr. Kant. You, of course, leading the strategy and vision for the country. And you've been a huge supporter of innovation with the India Stack and UPI and mobile payments, and now with Arogya Setu, etc. And Debjani obviously leads on the ground of the IT industry. We will talk more about that when she gets on. Mr. Kant, through the last 2-3 hours, there's been a very interesting set of sessions. And let me just, for your benefit, lay down a couple of things that have come up, which I thought would be very interesting and very relevant. And Rajan Anandan, the MD of Sequoia, was on, and he made a couple of good suggestions in terms of how can we really encourage entrepreneurship and innovation in Bharat. And the first thing he said was, can we start celebrating the people who are successful in Bharat? Can, you know, Mr. Kant and Debjani and everybody else in the country leadership, right, really start to celebrate and applaud these entrepreneurs who do good work in Bharat. And the second, and I'll just lay the points out and then maybe you can address them as you get to your remarks, Mr. Kant. But the second he said is that within the 10,000 crore startup fund that you have helped create, if you could ring fence maybe 500 crores or something that is tied to Bharat, so that then becomes, you know, very, very helpful. And the last was, suggested an entrepreneur in residence program to really help people understand the challenges of Bharat. Otherwise, people who are sitting in urban centers really don't get it, right? So how can we spread that? So those are things that he came up with. And then we had a very good, interesting session on using vernacular and voice, even WhatsApp on feature phones, using feature phones to really smoothen out some of the business process flow for insurance and e-commerce and banking, etc. But using technology to make that happen. Then we spoke about digital learning, and the session that you probably heard KK of founder of Mindtree talk about his experience in really taking technology and skilling together and building a platform and using it for mass entrepreneurship. So he used the example of how they enabled 15,000 rack pickers, right? And how you can really build those kind of models and then, you know, use them for different other domains and other purposes. And there are some asks that he has from the government as well, which will get taken up in the next session when the IT secretaries come on. But Mr. Kant, let me turn it over to you for your remarks and your commentary. And thank you very much once again for being on and encouraging innovation in Bharat.
So let me just say that it's a great pleasure to be in the midst of all of you, and let me compliment this initiative of Nasscom Build with Bharat. So, you know, notwithstanding the impact of COVID-19, my view is that India's on the cusp of a very huge and a very tremendous opportunity for both economic progress and improvement of the general well-being of by all measurable indicators of economic growth and human development. My perspective is that the current decade, the 2020s, must belong to India. The technology leadership shown in India since the onset of this pandemic, the COVID-19, amplifies India's dominance in expressing its technology might in full glory, to my mind. A crisis like COVID-19 pandemic has to be tackled by three interconnected levers: frontline health workers, infrastructure and medical facilities, and technology. We took early lead in leveraging technology to fight this pandemic. India to my mind, in the coming days will play a major role in COVID-19 vaccine development. Approximately 30 attempts are being made from India to develop the vaccine. And these include efforts where India is participating in global attempts and in partnership amongst Indian academia and industry. We have the example of Serum Institute of India, the world's largest vaccine maker by number of doses produced and sold globally. Actually has partnered with AstraZeneca to supply 1 billion doses of University of Oxford's potential novel coronavirus. You know, the AstraZeneca partnership is the latest in a series of arrangements that Serum has linked in recent months. We have this unique example of Arogya Setu, India's mobile product to fight COVID-19, which was developed in private-public partnership with the goal of combining technology and data science to gain an information edge against this very, very unpredictable and very highly infectious enemy. It was a great tool for contact tracing. And the app offers a very comprehensive set of interventions against COVID-19 and has registered actually several firsts in the 10 weeks since its launch. The app possibly has the most reach and impact when compared to all other COVID-19 contact tracing and self-assessment tools combined globally. All of them combined globally versus Arogya Setu. And it has pioneered a new approach to data, giving data-driven epidemiological flattening of the curve through syndromic mapping. It has today more than 125 million registered users. Arogya Setu has alerted more than 140,000 people across India to the potential risk of infection through Bluetooth contact tracing from approximately 30,000 users who have tested positive. Of the 37,000 tested from the set of people assessed at high risk, more than 10,600 people have tested positive. The efficacy of testing recommended by Arogya Setu was much higher than any testing protocol anywhere globally. I'm telling you all this because this is a unique example of innovation by Bharat. Because this is a great example of leveraging the best from public and private sector to address technology needs for Bharat. It broke new grounds. The app is now open source, another first for a rapidly evolving product that is live at this massive scale. My belief is that COVID-19 pandemic is an opportunity to evaluate status quo, challenge the assumptions of business as usual, and take advantages of new opportunities. And to my mind, there are three key themes. India as a global manufacturing and export hub. Secondly, digital payments and truly financial inclusion. And thirdly, healthcare becoming truly digital in this age of cloud hospitals, telemedicine, and video consultations. My view is that manufacturing should lead India's export target of US $550 billion by 2025. One of the key things which we are trying to do is to make some of our key sectors globally competitive. And this it would necessarily necessitate that in some of these we identify key sectors of India. And therefore we came out with a strategy of several sectors. We started with a mobile manufacturing scheme where we've done a production-linked incentive. We've pushed for pharmaceuticals, for critical APIs, drug intermediaries. We are pushing for medical devices in a very big way for domestic manufacturing of medical devices. Similarly, we are pushing large scale for textiles, particularly to support manufacturing or exports of man-made fiber and winter wear. And we are pushing for newer schemes across automobile and auto components, networking products, food processing, advanced chemistry, cell battery storage, solar PV manufacturing, many of these areas. I'm making these points because it's important for India to realize that quite often we get into sunset areas of industry. And it's very difficult to penetrate markets. It's not just the domestic market, but global markets if you don't get into sunrise areas of industry. And that's what our attempt is. Now, in the West, actually, if you look around, across the Western world, leaders are figuring out how to distribute benefits to their citizens. You know, Mark Anderson of Anderson Horowitz recently wrote a blog. And in the blog, he said that in the US, we don't even have the ability to get federal bailout money to the people and businesses that need it. Tens of millions of laid off workers and their families and many millions of small businesses are in serious trouble right now, and we have no direct method to transfer them money without potentially disastrous delays. A government that collects money from all its citizens and businesses each year has never built a system to distribute money to us when it's needed most. We need to learn this from India. And he says that compare this to India, where they've diligently built for past several years. Aadhaar coverage is more than 95%, 1.3 billion. Monthly transaction volumes of UPI is more than 1.2 billion. Close to 400 million Jan Dhan accounts. Between 2014 and 17, 55% bank accounts were opened in India. US dollar 20 billion in savings from DBT from 2014 to 19. And now world-class products are being built on India Stack, a set of open API-based public platforms. We are, on account of this pandemic, it's literally forced us to take a leap in medical education. We'll be opening up many more new medical colleges. We are pushing for expanding district hospitals. In PPP mode, medical colleges to adopt primary health and wellness center, short-term bridge courses, many things we are doing. The emergence of transformative new technologies, such as machine learning and Internet of Things, all of them allow us to rethink the future of healthcare delivery in India, particularly the Bharat area of India, the Bharat aspect. And I think what we are doing is to build 150,000 primary health and wellness centers and ensuring that we are able to take care of primary health care of our citizens. And our objective is that we truly democratize access to quality healthcare in remote and rural areas by reducing reliance on unqualified medical practitioners and eliminating the time and money spent traveling to nearby town cities to access medical services. We therefore, another great example was that we worked with the private sector, and just about 10 days time, young entrepreneurs helped us to build the telemedicine portal. We came out with the revised telemedicine practice guidelines on 25th March 2020. By mid-April, we had a very dynamic telemedicine portal. So new digital ecosystems are visible. Opportunities span such areas as data-driven lending and insurance payouts, in the farm sector to digital solutions that map out the most efficient routes and monitor cargo movements on Indian highways. My view is that India stands to create more value if it succeeds in nurturing new and emerging digital ecosystems in sectors such as agriculture, education, energy, financial services, healthcare, and logistics. The benefit of digital application to productivity and efficiency in each of these new digitizing sectors are increasingly becoming visible to all of us. In logistics, tracking vehicles in real time has enabled shippers to reduce fleet turnaround by 50 to 70%. Similarly, digitizing supply chains allow companies to reduce their inventory up by 20%. Farmers can cut the cost of growing rice by about 20% using data on soil conditions that enables them to minimize the use of fertilizer and other inputs. We in Niti Aayog run a program in the most backward districts of India. We don't call them the backward, we call them the aspirational districts. Some of these innovations are being implemented in these districts and are seeing remarkable results. More than 40% of India's labor force actually works in agriculture, which contributes about 18% of country's GDP. Farms are small, averaging a little more than 1 hectare and are inefficient, with crop yields ranging from 50 to 90% of those in Brazil, China, Russia. Therefore, many factors contribute to this. Indian farmers have a dearth of machinery and relatively little data on soil health, and virtually no data on soil health, weather, and other variables. We looked at the government online farmers advisory portal. About 50% of farmers' queries pertain to weather-related information. Because of poor logistic and warehousing, we lose about 15 billion worth of agriculture produce, which goes into waste before reaching consumer. And digital technology is the way forward. It can transform India's agricultural ecosystem in several ways. I'm saying this because now government has demonstrated its political will to bring radical reforms in agriculture, in MSME. And it's really about making an impact with entrepreneurship in Bharat as the heart of India. And if we are able to transform this from online bank accounts can provide the income and spending data that farmers need to qualify for cheaper credit from banks. Digital land registry records could make crop insurance available to more farmers. Precision agriculture, delivering real-time data to farmers' mobile phones, can help them optimize fertilizer, pesticides, and other inputs. This can increase yields by 15% or more. And after harvest, farmers could use variants of online marketplaces for agriculture produce to transact with a larger pool of potential buyers. We have in government one such platform that of agriculture market. We call it eNAM. It's available in 585 locations in 16 states and shows potential to increase price realized by farmers by 15%. My view is that there's a huge opportunity to build in a new India, completely new Bharat. By improved connectivity and increased technology adoption, we can significantly improve the market in India. Entrepreneurs are increasingly building products across sectors for these markets. We can unlock a huge potential for underserviced global markets through Indian startups. With increasing internet penetration, expanding technology access, and improving ease with online transactions, we expect more entrepreneurs to service the challenging but undertapped markets of rural India. India's unique demographic and income mix requires heavy localization of products and solutions to succeed at scale. I've always maintained that Silicon Valley may be more innovative, but they have no challenges. All the challenges are in Bharat. And therefore, only we can find solutions to these challenges of India, from water availability to solid waste management, to health, to education. And therefore, these solutions, if we are able to find solutions to the challenges of India, we'll be actually finding a solution for the 7.5 billion people of the world. So the market is not just the 1.4 billion people of India, but the 7.5 billion people of the world who will move from poverty to middle class in the next decade. And that will be the middle class which India must aim to cater to. And therefore, while we build in India and we find solutions for India, we should look at the market, at the world. We should build in India for the world. Our ecosystem effort should be to promote product startups from India for global markets. And that will yield results. More and more entrepreneurs are building technology products from India and targeting both Western and Eastern India. They are finding solutions to the challenges and problems of India, to the unique problems of Bharat. And if you are able to find a solution for Bharat, you will be actually finding a solution for a vast segment of population across the world. And therefore, you are seeing, with access to large markets, high quality and relatively inexpensive talent, and increasing knowledge base, we anticipate that the Indian ecosystem will build more and more globally recognized products. We have the unique example of what we could do with ventilators, what we could do with PPE, what we could do with masks. All of them we are now exporting to the world. And much of this has been done in the heart of India, in the rural areas of India. So while we transform agriculture, we'll actually be transforming the lives of people of India. When we transform health, we'll actually be transforming the health of the vast segment of India who live in rural areas. When we provide better learning outcomes through digital education, we'll be actually changing the lives of many Indians. And that is what many startups are doing today, using artificial intelligence to really change both health outcomes and learning outcomes. So to my mind, this is a massive opportunity, huge opportunity, looking at the heart of India, finding solutions to the problems of India, finding solutions to the challenges of India. But while you're looking at the solutions for Bharat, the market should be really a global market. Never look inwards, never look at an isolationist perspective. You should think globally. And while finding solutions for Bharat, look at the world as your market. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Kant. That is extremely motivating, extremely encouraging. Build for the world, 7.5 billion people, etc. Build for everyone. Half this audience, the few hundred people that we have, Mr. Kant, are people who are actually wanting to learn about Bharat and then go and expand into Bharat, right? And they're trying to build solutions and products that will cater to waste management, environment, energy, agriculture, some of those difficult areas. So let me now move on to Debjani. There are lots of questions coming in, Mr. Kant. We'll come back and talk to you on that one. Debjani, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Debjani, loud and clear.
Okay. Wonderful. And Mr. Kant, I wasn't late. I was on this call from 3 p.m. listening to everything and everyone. Unfortunately, had a technical glitch at that point.
I never said you were late. I said only that the government is ahead of the private sector.
You bet. You bet. The team did dry runs and everything for you. For me, there was nothing.
Well, if not the government, at least Mr. Kant is always ahead, Debjani.
Yeah, there's no comparison. I absolutely won't even dare to. Thank you, Mr. Kant. That was just a fabulous and inspiring speech. And I think that's the kind of hope that our startups need to hear and need to get at this point in time. You know, I'm just amazed that it was only around a few months back, 3 or 4 months back in Feb, when Nasscom organized its annual Technology and Leadership Forum. And we talked about the report card for the industry. We talked about what a fantastic year the industry had had. We were entering 2020 at 191 billion as an industry. We saw growth across all segments, from software product to ER&D to BPM to manufacturing. We were cautious about COVID. We were more worried about supply chain impact out of China at that point in time, what would happen and what wouldn't happen. But I will be honest, I don't think any one of us believed that this would turn us completely on our heads and a few more circles. This was just February. This was just February. And as they say, man plans, God laughs. And I think that's exactly what happened to us, because what COVID has done is it has forced us to completely rethink our basic core strategies. What is our business model? What are our markets going to look like? What are our customers going to look like? We all agree moving to a hyper digital world. Everything is going to be touched by technology. I think COVID has accelerated the pace of digital transformation, maybe 100x than anything else out there. We've seen in the last few months, we have seen digital transformation that we haven't seen in the last few years. But we are also going to get into a world which is going to be by and large contactless. How do we cope in such a world? What does customer experience mean when you can't touch the customer, when you have to maintain that distance from the customer, from your consumers? How do you define consumer experience, given that we agree that's the most important thing in a contactless world? We are also going to enter a world where, unfortunately, the gaps between the haves and the have-nots is going to increase unless we absolutely put inclusion as a key design principle for our tech innovation. If we do not, we're definitely going to see with respect to the haves and the have-nots, and technology unfortunately can create a bigger gap. And this is where, as innovators, we have to adopt a people first lens to innovation. We have to think people first. We have to think inclusion ahead of anything as we innovate for the next few for the new norm, for the new world. And I think these are some critical changes that are going to happen. And just as COVID has forced the IT industry to not just pause, we are hitting the stop button for a second and then figuring out how to restart. Restart with a completely new playbook. I think startups and entrepreneurs will require to do the same thing. This is an opportunity to throw away the old playbook, and this is an opportunity to completely rewrite the new playbook. And yes, Bharat opens up tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurs, given the challenges we have, given the need for inclusion, and given that we are going to see unprecedented pace of technology adoption in India than we have ever seen before. Because if people want to stay connected, they want to learn, they want to talk to their doctor, they want to sell their products, they're all going to have to use technology, period. So this is going to see a much faster pace of digital transformation. But what we have to think through is the digital transformation in Bharat going to look the same as digital transformation in cities or in the West? Or is it going to look different? A lot of your speakers in the past sessions have talked about it and talked about it beautifully. I think it's going to be a mobile-led ecosystem. We're all clear about that. And it's not going to be led by smartphones. It's going to be led by feature phones to a very large extent. It's still going to be a shared model. Despite COVID, despite the need for contactless economy, we're still going to see a shared model in rural India, in Bharat, largely spearheaded by communities like the CSCs, etc., which still will be that first point of contact or first point of technology that a village has contact with. So, how do we build for these models is the key question that we have to ask. And there are three things I want to put forward here, and Mr. Kant, especially to you. Honestly, is a significant, and this is the time to do it. There is a need for something like a Bharat Fund for India. Investors still do not touch entrepreneurs who are developing for Bharat. They may have the global lens in mind, but if they're developing for Bharat, investors are still unwilling to touch entrepreneurs because they fear that we are not going to see immediate scale until they go global. And I think we get over this fear. We have to not just develop for Bharat, we have to make sure our products are successful in Bharat. And then we take it global. And this is where most countries have set up the fund to help entrepreneurs who are developing to solve problems that are rural, that are related to health, sanitation, education for the country. And I think India really needs to think through a Bharat Fund to make this a reality for our entrepreneurs. Otherwise, if we leave it to investors, we are never going to see this become reality because it's still going to be about build for the globe quickly. We need ensure we grow the right kind of talent ecosystem. Our startups are brilliant. They have brilliant technology expertise. But when you are developing for Bharat, you need domain expertise. You need people who understand what is like, what is the life of a farmer like? What is the life of a rural postman, teacher, whatever, but what is their life like, their values, their culture, their belief? Because you cannot develop something for the cities and just change the language, which is unfortunately what I see happening in most of these cases, solutions, where we just feel, okay, we're going to make it into Hindi and it's going to work. And it doesn't. We have to grounds up. We have to understand our consumers. And this is where we need a talent ecosystem that can bring together the technology world with the domain world. And how do we create that? How do we have people like NABARD and a few others participating in this journey of innovation for Bharat? I think that's going to be critical, and maybe Niti Aayog can play a very critical role there in bringing the different ecosystems together. And my strong advice to startups, yes, Bharat does provide a lot of opportunities. It is looking good now, especially if the funding becomes clear. It's a great opportunity. But if you guys are building for Bharat, don't adopt a technology lens. Adopt a lens, adopt a consumer lens, put people first, make it people-led innovation, and technology will follow. But that's going to be absolutely critical. And last but not the least, the part we have to fix is how do state governments, districts, departments, central governments, how do you consume these technologies? Because face it, in India, government is still going to be the primary driver of technologies that are being built for Bharat. So how do you consume? I think, Mr. Kant, we should honestly, maybe for 6 months or 1 year, ban POCs and pilots, because we do so many of those and then nothing happens. So we should straight away, unless somebody's plan absolutely is designed for scale, we should not do the POC or a pilot. We need design from scale at start. We need it built into design, and we need state governments. So I'm really happy that we have 3 of the top IT secretaries in this webinar. We need states to think through how do they scale from day one. What is the process required? How do RFPs need to change in order to buy from startups that are working on new technology? You can't adopt or buy a new blockchain technology and expect the startup to have 5 years experience in blockchain. It's not going to happen. Or nor can you expect startups to have a lot of good case studies. These are new technologies. So how do we collaborate? And I think the key word is collaboration, where and every stakeholder in the ecosystem, be it government, be it technology industry, be it startups, be it investors, have to come together and seriously collaborate in order to make the dream of built for Bharat. And I will say we have to stop saying built for Bharat. We have to deploy Bharat. We have to implement in Bharat. It has to be used. Otherwise we build so many products and they just don't get used. We have to ensure that we make Bharat a reality. We make digital transformation of Bharat a reality, and ensure that we are able to build solutions that can get the support of the ecosystem to actually reach the consumers and benefit the consumers. And to me, success is when millions and millions of rural users start adopting these technologies and start using these technologies, and their lives are ultimately improved. As Nasscom, that's the lens that we have. That's what we are focused on. It's not just about the technology, and I keep saying this, technology is not the magic. It's the users of technology that create the magic, and that magic will only happen once the technology is used. So our focus is how can we get the technology to get used? What are the obstacles? As I talked about, funding needs to be sorted out. The talent ecosystem has to come together. Markets have to come together. And of course, the consumer awareness. So I'm really looking forward to partnering with the ecosystem to do more in this space, but we should make it a mission that by end of 2020, we can significantly increase adoption of technology, these new technologies in Bharat, and not just building for Bharat. And that's Nipun, that's my problem with build for Bharat, because when we build, it doesn't automatically result in scale. We have to ensure adoption and build goes hand in hand. Thank you.
Yes, Debjani, well said. That we need to get scale going. We need to do 100x of what we have done so far. Only 7% of our startups in India are focused on things like energy and health and waste management and water management and things like that. If you add education to that, then it still goes up to 10-15%, but that's a very small number. So certainly we need scale. The other thing which you said, I think, is very relevant, which is that we should, I think, ring fence some resources. I think the Bharat Fund is a wonderful idea, and maybe we'll let Mr. Kant, talk a little bit on that one. But maybe we should also think about ring fencing some of our COEs and think of a virtual COE that Nasscom and the IT industry can support, which is kind of ring fenced for Bharat in some form. Mr. Kant, you were saying something.
No, I was not able to hear you. You had got muted for a while.
Okay. What I was saying is that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you heard Debjani's, talk about the Bharat Fund. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, Mr. Kant, because unless we ring fence some resources, it all tends to gravitate towards the low-hanging fruit, which is either consumer models, B2C models, or urban centers, right?
No, so two things on that. First is, I totally agree with Debjani that we should not have proof of concepts at all. I mean, the days of POC and all are over. There's no need at all. Secondly, in all these areas, the only way to succeed is that government has to be the first buyer, government has to be the first buyer, government has to be the first buyer. If you want size and scale to build up, don't expect that young entrepreneur to find a market. They've put in all kind of conditions for RFP, RFQs and all that. So my belief is always that what we should do is throw up a number of challenges to find solutions. And that we are willing to do in partnership with Nasscom. Throw up challenges, and through the challenge route, actually throw up series of challenges which we started doing through Atal Innovation Mission. We work in partnership with the ministries. Whoever succeeds actually has to be handheld. And challenge routes also succeed when you do a lot of handholding and ensure that the particular government is the buyer of that product which has been produced and is ensured the market for the 3 years. If you ensure a market for the first 3 years for that new technology, you would have built the ecosystem for him. Then to capture the rest of the market, he would then penetrate. In our country, the problem so far has been that we throw up RFP, RFQs, and we then go and buy the lowest cost at L1 cost. And you pay peanuts, you will get monkeys. So it's better than that is that you throw grand challenges that you want this to be developed. This is the solution you want. Let the people of India find a solution to that and say that I will buy this product for 3 years in a row. And I will ensure that the market for that is built up. Once that is done, the product will take off.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, I agree, Mr. Kant. Debjani, you saying something?
No, I completely agree with him. I think he said it.
I think it's wonderful if we can think of a model where we create challenges and then assure a market, then what else would a startup entrepreneur need? I mean, it is, if you can reserve some capital, reserve the help that they get from the ecosystem, and really give them access to the market, I think we can see a huge boom happening, which is innovation-led to solve some of our complex problems in Bharat, Mr. Kant.
So that is what now Atal Innovation Mission started off by building tinkering labs, and then it, did a lot of incubation centers. But the next key thing it is driving is this, that it is working with ministries to, in partnership with ministries, to take up a number of challenges where, as and when the product is built up, the procurement will be done by the departments for the next 3 to 4 years. And that is a lot of hard work which we have done.
We are almost out of time. There have been a series of questions that came in from the audience, Debjani and Mr. Kant, that I think you both addressed, but there's only one, if I might throw to either one of you, which is how do we encourage people, IT companies as well as startups, as entrepreneurs, etc., to go to the smaller cities? It's been a discussion that came up in the morning with Rajan as well. There have been a series of questions on that coming in from the audience. Would anyone offer any suggestions?
Sorry, what was the question, Nipun? Couldn't hear you fully, correct?
How do we encourage entrepreneurs as well as existing IT companies, existing organizations to operate from smaller towns, Debjani? Not just work from home, but really work from small towns.
So, Mr. Kant, I can take that if you want, and then, I think COVID is doing that.
I also respond to this.
COVID is doing that to a very large extent. What has COVID done? Till end of May, 98% of the 4.35 million IT industry was working from home. And what do we mean by working from home? Working from home is really working from residence. A large part of our employees went back to the small towns and the cities and the villages that they stay in, where their families are, because they didn't want to get stuck in a hostel or wherever they stay in a city. So they went back. Work, as long as they had access to technology and a good internet connectivity, work has continued. And what this is involved right now, I'm sure you've heard a lot of IT companies talk about it. Most companies are saying they will never go back to 100% back to office model. Most companies are saying that it'll be a blended model going forward. Some had said 50%, some have said 75%, some have said 30%, but it is going to be a blended model going forward. I think, I hate what's happening with COVID, but I think if you have to look for a silver lining, COVID is driving these reforms, as Mr. Kant said, it's driving radical reforms, because incremental changes is not going to suffice in this environment. It's driving radical reforms. It has made the industry come together and realize that work from residence, and we're not even calling it work from home, we're saying work from residence, because they're going back to their houses, and these are small cities, can be a reality. There has to be some work done with respect to the last mile connectivity, with respect to especially power supply and connectivity in the last mile for smaller cities. Those two things need improvement. And of course, our labor laws have to go through some changes, so a company can have a majority of employees working in smaller cities and working remotely. But it is absolutely possible, and I think this remote work is also going to accelerate the gig economy tremendously, where you may not just be tied down to one 9-to-5 job. You might be tied, you might be working with a company, but you will have your time because you're in your home, you're in your city to work on other things. And I do hope that change gives rise to entrepreneurship. So I do see this change happening already.
So, to add on to what Debjani had said, I want to make 2 points. One is that, actually, unlike America and unlike Europe, which have got totally urbanized, in India, the process of urbanization has just begun. And if we were to copy the model of the Western world of urbanization, a model which has been driven by cities for cars and not for citizens. So all these cities were actually made for vehicle, cars. The American car companies drove the process of urbanization and at the cost of the life of citizens. And therefore, my view is if India was to replicate that model of the European and American world, India would require 4 planet Earth. 4 planet Earth. There is, alas, only one planet. And therefore, you don't have water, you don't have adequate amount of, the amount of climatic change it will fuel will be unparalleled. And therefore, when the process of urbanization has begun, India has a huge opportunity. And that opportunity is a consequence of 2 things. One is that the sharing and the electric vehicle change is upon us, because the cost of battery has fallen from about $1,100 per kilowatt hour to about $170 per kilowatt hour. And my view is that in the next 3 years, it will come down to $75 per kilowatt hour. And at that point, the cost of vehicle, EV vehicle will be much less. And therefore, India needs to actually make technological quantum jumping into new areas of battery manufacturing, electric vehicles, etc. The second key transformation that is happening is because internet has enabled large flows of data, the power of computers into petaflops have made computer very powerful, and the error rates have fallen very, very low, and therefore machines have developed the same power as human mind, and therefore artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence, till now we used to say that you needed size and scale. And because size and scale was needed, you created large manufacturing companies, and then as a consequence of that, you had urbanization. But artificial intelligence enables you to make your MSMEs and your micros as efficient as the large companies, because you are linked up directly to the consumer, and you can alter your production based on consumer demand. The nature of manufacturing itself will go a radical disruption. And therefore, these 2 things, the nature of urbanization will alter, the nature of manufacturing will alter. And that is something which India must grasp. And it is possible today not to repeat the same mistakes which the Western world has made. And you can create a far more sustainable society, but only if you are able to use technology and blend it to your process of getting into sunrise areas of growth.
So, Mr. Kant and Debjani, we are almost at the end. Let me summarize the 3 things that I'm taking away. One is a challenge-driven, market access-led approach for Bharat entrepreneurs, for scaling up Bharat entrepreneurs. We don't want POCs, we need scale, and we want things to be done at 100 times larger than where it is right now. So that's the first one. The second one, Debjani, as you said, accelerating of the gig economy, working from small towns, really spreading innovation and spreading work and employment everywhere, not just the big cities. And the third one, Mr. Kant, is really that India becomes, a tech-driven powerhouse in the new age industries. You laid out so many different examples, but if I were to just summarize that, this is our decade, this is our century. We become a tech-driven powerhouse, which will impact not just Bharat, not just all of India, but then it has a scope to expand for the rest of the world as well. So with that,
and COVID-19 provides you that opportunity for radical transformation. Don't go by business as usual. Don't go by status quo. Disrupt India in a manner which the world has never seen before.
Absolutely, Mr. Kant. So thank you both very much for being here, for talking to the startups, as well as for your encouragement for innovation in Bharat. Debjani and Mr. Kant, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Kant. We're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.